Hello and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Tonight we are joined by Roni Robbins. Welcome to the room, Roni. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great now that I got all my technical difficulties out of my system.
Oh, you're fine. Angel Bear in the room says you're doing a good job, so no fears, no
Okay,
fears.
great. Well, thanks for everyone's patience with me.
Oh,
Mhm.
you're fine. Everything new takes a little bit of adjustment. It's
Yep.
fine.
How about that?
Now, Ronnie, I want to first start right off because I found it very interesting. You're a reporter,
I
yes?
am. Yes, yes. I'm
Oh,
what they would say is a seasoned journalist for some,
season.
yes, seasoned because I've been doing it for 37 years, would you believe? So,
No,
yeah,
wow.
yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Published for 37 years, so yes.
Nice.
Yep.
Now, you work for the Atlanta Journalist Constitution, right?
Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I'm a freelancer, uh-huh.
And you also work for Medscape and WebMD, am I correct?
Yes, they are sister publications. I work for the Medscape part, freelance right now.
Nice. Now, how did you start out in journalism?
I took a journalism class in high school, and I did well in it. I wrote the opening copy for the school yearbook, and I was a shoo-in right away. I was a good writer. I liked essay writing in English class, and I just took off from there. And it has been one step after another from there to college, journalism school, and editor of my school newspaper at college, and then on to professional. And then, I've gotten to a point where my last job, full-time job, was an editor at Medscape WebMD up until about a year ago. So I feel like I reached the pinnacle at that point.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, yes, baby steps along the way, and each step building to something bigger and better, I would imagine.
So, what was your first job out of journalism school?
I wrote for the Florida Today, which is sort of a prototype for USA Today in
Mhm.
Melbourne, Florida, and I covered space mission launches. And I
Wow.
wrote about the beach communities in that area, which was a nice job, working right on the beach. My geographic beats were, some of them ended with the word beach: Melbourne Beach, Indialantic, and Indian Harbor Beach, and all the beaches near Cocoa Beach. Most people know about Cocoa Beach and I Dream of Jeannie, if you're old
Mhm.
enough, and just the space shuttle launches from Cape
Nice.
Canaveral. So that was my first job.
That's awesome, and yes,
Mhm.
I'm old enough to know about Jeannie.
Okay, okay, yeah. and and so that takes place there in the fictional version, but in real life, they had space launches from Cape Canaveral, and I went to go cover them in different capacities, whether it was a night launch or I did the first post Challenger um, launch, which was I was on a Coast Guard cutter and patrolling in case something should happen again. So it was part of history, I guess.
Nice. Think that's extraordinary. So how many launches did you go to? Do you remember?
Probably a handful, but that Coast Guard cutter one was the most dramatic because you get seasick when if they're going to go fast, and it's choppy water and it's the
Mm.
ocean. So I was holding on for dear life and hoping not to barf. And also, I had heavy equipment. This was before modern technology, so like this phone and I had that was very heavy. It was like a big pocketbook like you'd see the photographers carrying, and I had to deal with that and also try to hold on for dear life and write at the same time. So always a challenge being a journalist.
Yeah. It
I
sounds funny now, but I'm sure it was like, "Oh
no,
my gosh."
no, I was nauseous for sure, but if they really had to go patrolling the water for, but I was glad that they didn't have to go patrol the water because that might have been even worse. And also having to deal with that. So I would be part of history instead of just covering history, which happens. I've been on a hot air balloon that almost crashed.
Oh my
I've
gosh.
been on crime scenes before the police get there.
Oh.
So yeah, the life of a journalist sounds really exotic, and but I've been paparazzi. It sounds exciting, but sometimes it's a lot of work.
Oh my goodness. You were at crime scenes?
I was a
Anything you can elaborate with being not being too gruesome?
I think I covered a pirate arrest or something. The pirates kidnapped people in Orlando, and I went to go cover that. Yeah, some really interesting stories for sure. That
Wow.
I was out in the water with a beached whale. Florida created some interesting stories, and I don't remember if I had as interesting stories my second job, but I definitely had interesting stories my first one.
Right. So now how long did you work at, WebMD?
I worked there for 2 years, but I was a freelancer for I'm sorry, I worked as an editor for about 2
Okay.
years. That was the end of my, you know, uh, full-time career at this point. But I was a freelancer for WebMD a while back, for a number of years. So, and now I'm freelancing for them again. So, about 6 months after I lost my job, which was pretty traumatic for me,
Mhm.
just to be without a full time job and having to figure out my next steps. I started freelancing for the Journal Constitution, which I had freelanced before. So everything seems to be cyclical in my life. And, but I started freelancing for them, and then I got to freelance for the publication that booted me, so I'm freelancing for them. So
Oh, wow.
it proves that it wasn't me, it was financial. So, never
Yeah.
give up. Never give up is usually what I tell people, because and life is so ironic in many ways. You don't expect that you'll be back at the same publication that you got booted from, downsized. But
Yeah.
you don't expect you'll be freelancing for the same publication more than once. I was a reporter for a publication, and then I was an editor for a publication at different times.
Yeah.
So it's very strange how life works out.
Right. Well,
Yes.
I think that's freaking awesome, though. I mean,
Thanks.
it's interesting to me because I have went to WebMD. I'm kind of like, a big time self-diagnosing of myself.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so for that you were had time there, I love being able to speak with people that, you know what I mean, the places that I've visited or I've been or I've used, and then to find people who actually were hands-on. I just find that incredible.
Well, remember, I'm working and I had worked and freelance for Medscape, which is the business arm, the professional arm. So I wrote
Right.
more for doctors, and my beats were medical students and residents, PAs and nurses, and
Mhm.
NPs. So now I'm pretty much just medical students and residents. And then for the Atlanta Journal Constitution, it's more general healthcare wellness stories, and on
Nice.
the featurey side for the most part, for
Wonderful.
them,
Well,
for both of
if
them.
you ever want to come back and share some stories, because we love to talk about women's health here as well.
Yes, yes, I realize that. So yes, and senior health and environmentalism, which
Mhm.
I wrote for Mother Nature Network for a while, and some of my articles were picked up by Huffington Post and Forbes. So yes, and I've written for women's publications. So I'm all in your genre, in your
Yes, you are.
specialty. So
Yes,
I
we'll
don't know
just
that
bring
my
you back
stories
and
would be so exciting in those areas. They're more straightforward,
well, the
nothing
thing
too.
about that, even with a straightforward thing, if if I've read the details or I'm pretty good about picking points out of things and bringing more conversation to it. So I think that
Mhm.
would be totally interesting. If you're
Mhm.
ever interested and you want to shoot me some articles and say, "Hey, here's some stuff. You want to make a story out of this? We can do it."
Okay. Well, there Google me. I've got so much online on my website and everything of all my stories that I've written. I think Muck Rack has them all. I
Oh,
didn't even know that
nice.
they were tabulating all of that, but yeah, it's great to be speaking with women, be speaking to people who value healthcare. It's so much a part of. It's the most important thing is healthcare. My husband won't spend money on different things, but health comes first. Like that's
Yeah.
his always. You hear him say this. So.
Well, crazier times are happening, so we really got to grab a hold of it and talk
Mhm.
more and more about it.
Yeah.
Keep it
Well,
in
there's
the.
there's cuts going on, so that's
Uh,
definitely in the news, and I can't seem to get some assignments lately because it's hard for those that are covering the news on a daily basis to keep up. That's
well,
the
let me
deal.
ask you this. Have you ever now I know that it's still kinda iffy whether or not they'll still be there because they took them off for, a day, and there's still talks about getting rid of it, but have you ever thought about doing any kind of news references on TikTok? Because there are people who have done their own stuff. Oh, you could also do on, oh, hold on a minute. I gotta look here real quick because I can't
Blue
remember
sky.
nothing. Yeah, there's Blue
Yeah.
Sky
Mhm.
plus, Substack. Substack, you could
Right.
actually write,
Right.
and you can even have membership where people would come in to, join and
Right.
get more details
Right.
for
I'm
your.
familiar with all of those. I'm very into technology, contrary to the issues that I had getting on your technology. I do have a TikTok, but it's for my book.
Mhm.
And my son, who's an actor in LA, created it. So I've got family involvement here. But I figured I needed his talents to create my TikTok. So I do have a TikTok, but yeah, I don't know what's going on with TikTok. I don't know what's going on
Oh,
with
I
X.
know.
I built my X before my book came out, and I get the least amount of interaction,
Mhm.
engagement on X than I do on Facebook and LinkedIn. So
Oh, I used to have over 10,000 followers, but I'm not gonna make this a political conversation because that's for other podcast types or even ones I do on my own that I give a little bit of details into, but, um, I got rid of X. I had over 10,000
oh,
followers, and I deleted it because, of different opinions. I disagree with a lot of things happening
oh,
in that realm. So,
mm.
I was like, "Nah, I'm not on Facebook either anymore either."
Oh,
So,
okay. Well,
yeah, so
I
but
every once in a while I'll post something on X, but it used to be the go-to. I had two X
Mhm.
accounts, Twitter accounts,
Yes.
one for my professional life for Medscape, and then one for my book, or more personal, well, my articles too. So I
Right.
always post my articles on um, any of my social media, but I'm all over social media.
Well,
Yeah,
awesome. That's still good to know.
yeah,
So, since we referred to your book a few times, just to let our audience know, your book is called Hands of Gold. Am I
right.
correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and now when was this published again?
It was published in 2022.
2022.
Yes.
Okay, now if I remember correctly, this had a little bit to do with your family. I know it's
Yes,
fiction, but was it
yes,
loosely based on some
yes.
family happenings?
Yes, it's loosely based on cassette tapes, more pop culture. Cassette tapes, although we may have TikTok as pop culture we'll be like, remember TikTok?
Yes.
Um,
I
or or
remember
X.
cassette tapes, girl.
Yeah,
I
so
still have
cassette
them.
tapes. And so, well, you're giving your age too, but or
I
something.
know.
But so my grandfather left cassette tapes of his life after, and so when he died, and he my mom got the cassette tapes and she gave them to me. Now, my grandparents, what's significant about this is there's a bunch of different things that caught me about their story. They died on the date of each other a year apart. We've got Valentine's Day. It's actually Galentine's Day. Happy Galentine's Day for the women and you all. And tomorrow's Valentine's Day. They might not have subscribed to Valentine's Day. It has a Christian angle to it, but even though it's universal, but they died on the date of each other a year apart, January 31st. So I got the cassette tapes after a few years after my grandfather died. And so there's a love story, and he was a clinical trial patient for streptomycin. He was told he was terminal with TB at 26 but lived till 86. Obviously I'm here. And he was a clinical trial patient for an experimental treatment still used today. Tuberculosis is the largest infectious disease killer in the world. And so he was part of history. He saved people in a workplace shooting spree. This is all based on facts, but I played with the facts, which I'm never able to do as a journalist. And I made up a lot of names, made up the dialogue, and I made it more exciting than it is. I mean, there's a lot with the book, very dramatic already. They lost most of their family in the Holocaust. They lost a son. There was a terrible accident that happened, not in addition to the workplace shooting spree in which my grandfather saved people. It was written up in the New York Daily News. Irony is I ended up freelancing for the New York Daily News, like just weird stuff in my life, all this irony, which is part of my name. So it makes sense. So irony, just how things work out in life. And you don't really think about it until afterwards. But anyway, that's the story about Hands of Gold, and it's won 6 awards, and it's in the Holocaust Museum gift shop, and was written about in the Jerusalem Post and the Washington Jewish Week and others. So there's some of it. I was in a big book signing with Nikki Haley and Jodi Picoult and John Meacham, and Andrew Young. Benjamin Netanyahu came remotely, and Bernie Marcus, and a few other, Melissa Rivers, daughter of
Yes,
Joan Rivers.
yes.
Yes. So there were a bunch of celebs and me in this book festival here. So I got lucky that way, or just I was selected. So I have connections in the Jewish community and in the Jewish with Jewish organizations. So that those all paid off in this regard. But it's got to be a quality product too, or nobody would consider you. They're not going to bring people to come see you.
Right.
So
It's interesting. We had another gentleman, and if you ever want to connect, hit me up on Podmatch, and I will connect you to who he was. I think, what was it? 2024, Laura, was it the end of 2024? And his grandparents were in the Holocaust as well, and he wrote a book based on that. He's actually a doctor, a radiologist.
it's Robert Wolf.
Yes, there you go.
We're published by the same publisher.
Nice.
And he got me onto this system where I found you. So yes.
I
thought you only had women on your show.
No, I didn't. No. I don't. I am not gender specific.
No. Okay.
Everyone is welcome. Okay. It's just typically because of my circle, and because I talk about women's health and a lot of more women's issues than anything. I usually get more women than men. But usually a lot of everyone that usually comes on my show usually has written a book, or they have some sort of writing in their past or future. And so, or artistic. I've actually had actors as well and producers on my show. So it just depends. You know what I mean? Right. All is welcome. If you've got an interesting story, I open up the door to you.
Well, you did well by getting him, and he's why I do podcast. I'm on podcast. So yes, we are close. We are publishers, Amsterdam Publishers, the largest publisher of Holocaust memoirs, and
Mhm.
a few books of fiction like mine, which were sort of experimental, I guess. But you know, a separate branch, and I was part of it. It had started right when I needed it to start.
Well, you mentioned awards, and one of the rewards you do have on your book, and it's the International Book Awards. You were an
Right.
International Book Awards winner. Now, how did that come a pass? I mean, did they just grab a hold of your book, or your publisher introduced you some things? How did that come a
So most
pass?
of the time, so I won 6 awards: 2023 International Book Award for um, multicultural fiction, I believe that's correct, and also 2023 Global Book Awards for family saga, maybe. But I'll have to look at my list. But um, I won American Fiction Awards. That one's probably the family saga one. I know what it was. Global Book Award was for biographical survival, whatever,
Nice.
whatever that category. I won those two in 2023. In 2024, I won a finalist for American Legacy Book Awards. And the answer to your question is I entered these contests by myself, on my own. And they are legit. I knew that they were legit. I found out that they were legit before I entered them. They're not the top literary prizes that are out there, but they still have to weed through the entrance, those that enter the contest and make a decision.
Right.
So I won
Oh,
in certain categories, and there were others that didn't. And I knew that, and it helps, to have won
well, yeah.
awards for somebody to have read the book and made a decision that it was worthy of such.
Yes. It's
So
very commendable. It's
thank
very
you.
commendable.
Yes.
Any person given recognizing to your work, whether they love it or totally hate it. I've written 15 myself, but I'll tell you, when people tell me that they totally hated it, but they can tell me the very ending, I'm like, yes, but you read it to the end.
Mhm, mhm. Yes,
So
yes.
let's talk a minute about. So you went from nonfiction because of being a for journalists, and then you went right into fiction. Now, what drawed you to go to fiction?
Well, I really based it on nonfiction. I based it on the facts, but
Oh,
I
yes,
decided that
yes.
I wanted to protect the innocent. The names, the people are still alive and that are in the book, that are
Mhm.
described in the book, and so I wanted to protect their privacy, and I wanted to make it more than just a boring. No, let's not say it like that. I wanted it to have life to it, that I
Mhm.
needed to make it even more dramatic than it was, and I needed to make up dialogue. I'm not
Right.
sure it would have been as interesting if it was just this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened. It needed some dialogue, and since I knew I had to make that up, because I didn't know what was being said at the time, I'm not sure how people designate their work nonfiction or fiction. Can it be considered nonfiction if most of it is based on the truth? Either way, I wanted to change the names and protect the innocent. And I didn't feel right about labeling it nonfiction, in that I made up, uh, played with the facts and also made up the dialogue. So
Right.
I
I
get a sort of protection by saying that it's fiction, and then let the reader decide what really happened. It's close enough. It's historically accurate, um,
Mhm.
and people who know the players, the characters, will tell me that it seems true to life. So that's all. That's all that really matters, and the
I
rest of the readers won't know the difference.
Right. I kinda see it as a movable life. You gave a very nonfiction story movable, so you gave it a plot to move along the storyline, and
Yes.
you gave it more life by having the characters in the book breathe words to each other, which weren't
Mhm,
probably given to you in the tapes. They were just more documented of time and space
mhm,
through
mhm.
through the history. So I fully understand that. I get what you're saying. So now, since this book was based on characters and people in your life, how did they feel about when the book came published?
So I actually lost my first publisher about 2 years before I got my publisher who took me to the finish line and actually published the book. Because the first publisher, um, I got cold feet and then I jinxed it, I think. I, I, uh, I was afraid that one of my family members might sue me, so I
Mm,
got an LLC, which I still think is important. And somebody advised me to get an LLC just in
mhm,
case anyone wanted to come after me for anything. So I got an LLC, but I told my publisher about it, and she was leery of that, and so she didn't want to move forward. And we had been working together for 2 years on the book. Now she made the book better, and I paid her for the work that she did. But I moved, but 6 months later, I was lucky enough to find the second publisher. And her response to me when I revealed again that I had an LLC and I, was trying to protect myself in case somebody sued me, she said, "They'll sue you, not me. I'm not worried. Let's go." So they were both female, both women entrepreneurs who publishers, and so that was great. And I don't regret any of it. The first publisher just wasn't right for me. And so
mhm.
the second publisher, much more responsive. We're a whole community who still get, you see that I know Robert Wolf, and there are a bunch of others that we keep in touch, and we're part of a author community and we support each other. So I think that's just lovely. And I'm not sure that would have happened with the first publisher. So everything happens for a reason.
Yes, most definitely.
Yes.
So, but nobody ended up suing you, right? You did
Nobody
okay with
sued me
that.
so far. But I would say
Awesome.
the answer to the question is majority of my relatives who actually have come out of the woodwork, like I didn't even know they existed, and now I've got cousins and all over the world, cousins that came and said, I heard about your book, I read your book, I knew your grandparents, this, that, and the other. And so I've gained a bigger um, family base than I even knew
Nice.
existed. And the majority of them were very supportive. There was that one relative who didn't really like that I didn't ask permission to use the cassette tapes to create a book, and that I might have depicted one of the main characters in a sexy way,
Mm.
as the daughter of the parent, no, as the daughter of the main character. That didn't make any sense. Well, maybe it did, but as the daughter, it didn't sit
Mhm.
right that the main
Right.
character should have sex in my book. Or I mean, obviously I got here, so somebody did something, or there's a lot of begetting, but that wouldn't have been as,
Yeah.
nobody understands about begetting anymore in a modern age. So you got to have
Oh,
a little bit
I
more,
get you.
and women. She was a sexy woman. Nobody, that's who she was, and that's who she is in my book, and
Mhm.
what she was. I knew her differently at that time as my grandmother, but at one time, she was a dancer. She was a theater person. She performed. She was a performer. So she's a real person. She's a real woman who should all have
Right,
all of that, as we all should.
right.
Yes.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. My mother, since my father passed, she lives on our property. She has an apartment across from my she shed,
Mm.
on the other side of the pool, and we'll talk about some intimate natures, and she'll ask my input on some things, and I'll give it to her. And but when it gets too in depth, I'm like, okay, wait, wait, wait. I gotta back this train up, Mom. You're my mother. I don't know if I can handle. I know that you did this. I just don't know how far in depth I want to go to hear
Yeah.
it.
Yes. Yes. So there's probably some shirking back and,
Yeah.
sort of covering your ears type of thing. Like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. So,
That's there's always that inner
that's,
child in us, like, "Okay, mom, all right, okay, wait."
no, really, no. We just sort of got here. But when you're writing a
Yeah.
book, there's some descriptions about a romance. They were married for 65 years. They had five
Mhm.
children. Somewhere in all, now there were some comments, that are more like that generation would say, is like, I didn't even think I slept with her. I have no idea how this child came here. That was my grandfather's humor, right?
Right.
I didn't even
Mhm.
sleep with her. It can't be. So, or whatever. So it wasn't.
The
Yeah.
stork dropped me off. I don't know
Yes,
what
there
happened.
was definitely a picture of a stork in their house for sure, just in case there was any question. Never happened. Just dropped
That's
you off.
right.
Yes. So it was a real thing. And
Mm.
but I get it, but I created real characters with real experiences, and to me that's part of life. So
Yeah.
and
I
bringing life. So yeah.
I had a brief time of ghostwriting for someone else. He had written bits and pieces of his own work and then asked me to refine it. And so I look at what you did similar to that. You had something in front of you that had great context, and you just gave it just a little bit of more of movable life. You made
Mhm.
the nonfiction come even more to life by giving the people in the book more humanity. Because
Right.
you can talk nonfiction all you want, you can give the facts, but when you give them a soul and a breath of life on the page,
That's
that brings the entire story more to life.
exactly. Great.
Yeah.
Yes. I couldn't say it better myself.
Well,
Perfect.
I
But
find it
yes, it was
commendable.
a challenge. It was a challenge as a journalist and somebody who is used to basing stories on facts and interviews, to take an interview and play around with it. And the interview was the cassette tapes.
Mm.
So I did have
Mhm.
his voice, and I really did try to capture his voice and his humor and his personality. And there's Yiddish in the book throughout because that's the language that they would have used, even though they kept it from us. There's a glossary in the back. Nobody ever finds it, and most of the words are pretty much pop culture anyway, but that is I feel strongly about preserving the language that they would have used, at least in a little way, at least in the creating the characters and the personality that exists when you use a foreign tongue that
Mhm.
sometimes doesn't even make any sense. Or doesn't translate well. So I tried to put it in context, and most people can figure it out whether they know Yiddish or not. And then they get to the back and they're like, oh, there was a glossary? I didn't even know. So yeah,
Mm.
keeping them guessing. But yeah, it was a challenge. It was definitely a challenge to move from what I was comfortable with as a seasoned or veteran or long time, 4 decades of being a published journalist for publication, big publications even, and then to take it back to what I was not used to, which was a new branch of writing that I just was a big experiment for me. And I had cold feet all the way along, and it took me a long time, on and off, to get the book professionally published, which was what I was holding out for, not to be self-published, but to and not subject everyone I know to reading a book that I wasn't sure was good enough. So that I held out for the end gold medal per se of being selected from a slush pile and being approved in
Mhm.
by somebody who is willing to put some money behind me and take all my money. I mean, at least never give me any money for the book, but that's okay. I wanted that. I held out for that. Maybe at some
Yeah.
point I'll get some of it back.
I think generally as authors, we have what's called the imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And that meaning basically for anyone who's not familiar with it is that we just always question the work.
Mhm.
And if you hear one negative review, it's hard to walk away from that. I always tell people, I've had quite a few of young authors. I'm not saying that I'm all the best. You either love me or totally hate my work, and that's kind
Mhm.
of how I am. You either love how I write or you don't. I'm not like everyone's cup of tea. And if you've
Mhm.
read me, you know what I mean by that statement. But
Mhm.
when I first started, I didn't realize there was anything different on how I wrote. I didn't realize that there was anything. You know what I mean? I wrote what I liked,
Mhm.
and it wasn't when I started getting the reviews, you're all excited, "Oh my gosh, this person, that person," and then you'll hit that one. You're like, "I got 5 paragraphs ripping me to shreds."
Oh.
But at the very end, they were like, "But where's book 5?"
Oh, see? That's
Yes.
great. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so,
Well.
I tell people not to even go there. I say write to your passion, if it fills a void that you have on creativity in
Mhm.
yourself,
Mhm.
that's the most important, and if you get at least one reader who
Mhm.
appreciates what you've written,
Mhm.
you are a success. There's just no end to it. You are a success. If one person got your words and it meant something to them,
Yes.
that is success that not a greater margin of people never get.
Yes. Yes, and
So
I have had a few that have taken me to a different level, who've
mhm.
passed the book around, and some I can think of one that was wrote for me as when I was an editor, and then said she saw that I wrote a book, read the book, passed the book around to her family, raved about me, and then I got to speak at a group in Los Angeles where her sister-in-law lives. So it made its rounds, and because of word of mouth, I got a opportunity to speak to a group on the other side of the country. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and I forget where the woman was who she promoted me among her family members, and that's how it works. That's the grassroots of being this kind of a writer, of being an author, whose story touches people, and can
Mhm.
touch people in different parts of the country. So I've gone around the country a little. I went across the country. I went to a few places in the South mostly, and so I'm trying to expand that reach. But it's the connections with the readers that I would have never had. It took me in a different direction from my career. Now, people like my writing as a journalist. I've had people tell me they like my writing as a journalist. Sometimes I'm not writing the things that they want me to write. I'm cutting to the core and pulling out some negativity that they don't want to hear about. But as a journalist, as a news reporter, I am telling them sometimes what they don't want to hear, but
Mhm.
or don't think is very nice that I exposed different news. But for the most part, people seem to like my writing, and they still think I work for this publication that I no longer write for. So it's interesting because they'll come to me and say, "You're still with that publication," and I'll say, "No, I haven't been there in 5 years, but okay, how can I help you?" But anyway, yeah, I didn't know that this was going to be my path. I really do feel proud of having written a book, maybe even more so than my long journalism career, because my long journalism career built up to a certain level, one step at a time, logically. And there really was no logical reason for me to write a book. It wasn't part of the plan.
Mhm.
But it happened. It fell in my lap, literally, and I made a decision to go forth, and it took me a long time. So the fact that I was able to get to this point with the book, not that it's the bestseller or anything. It's been a bestseller on Amazon for different categories. It's been
Mhm.
at the top like 20, or I never saw if it went number one because I didn't even know you could check that at the beginning when it first came
Mhm.
out. but that doesn't, for me, that, some people say they're a best-selling author, and I don't try to claim that. I just say I'm a multi-award winning author, and I've had a few successes. Yeah.
Well, so what do you see coming next? Do you have plans to do another book? Are you doing some more journalism?
Yes.
What's next in your plan?
Well, right now I'm still freelancing, at least for one of the publications. I had an editor change at one of the publications, so I'm waiting to see if I can still write for them. But I am still working for them. It's just a matter of it's not as easy when you have a new editor to really establish that relationship. But I'm still writing regularly for 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 print for publications, Medscape for
Mhm.
sure. And I started on a second book. My dad passed within the. I know you said your dad passed too, and I
Yeah.
don't know how long that was. But my dad passed in the past year, and he was a blacksmith, which is odd to
Oh.
say. A Jewish blacksmith started in our garage on Long Island, New York. Again, not the usual type of setup, and you usually don't hear about a blacksmith at all. Now they're in North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, and he built a business from a small garage business to a business that has done work for celebrities, Clint Eastwood, Olivia Newton-John, Daniel Day-Lewis,
Nice.
and global, international
Mhm.
business that my brother now runs with my mom and my sister-in-law and their son. So so I'm writing about him, and I went from Hands of Gold. This working title is A Mighty Arm, from the blacksmith wielding a hammer. And so I wrote the beginning and the ending of it, and now I got to fill in the details and find time to do it. And then, the challenge of finding a publisher, or self-publish or whatever. So, but I really just started it. It's only been since he passed a year ago. So
Mhm.
yes, I'm writing another book, but I just don't know how fast and when.
Right. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It'll be 2 years for my father in March,
Okay, so
so
oh,
relatively,
March,
yeah,
also March.
yeah.
Ooh,
Oh,
mine
was
was March.
oh,
Mine was March
yeah,
too. All right, so
yeah. It's a very hard road on that stuff. And then this past year, my sister just passed away as well.
no,
I
that's
know it's been a rough year, and then not to mention how our world is changing so
yeah.
much. But again, that would be political talk.
Right. Well, that's one aspect of how our world is changing a lot.
Yeah.
There's wars, there's anti-Semitism. That's more social or cultural, or just the
Ugh.
hatred in the world that exists today and
Yes.
doesn't go away.
There is so much, and I'll be honest with you, I have been putting it in podcasts, but I've been trying to keep it separate unless guests want to dabble a little bit in it, but I try to keep it, you know what I mean, because we're here to talk about your adventures in your life, and
Yeah.
unless that inputs, I'm always open to do that. Um, but it is a scary time. And one important thing that I got lately, as I listened to someone else, and she said that if you have a platform, that it is your duty to your human beings alike to bring things to light that we aren't seeing in mainstream media. So you being a journalist is very interesting to me,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of questions on journalism right now that aren't being, you know what I mean, that we're being censored. So
Mhm.
it's just, I don't know, it's very scary times. It's very hard to articulate. I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time drafting things up when I get ready to have that type of podcast because there's so much, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And even right now, because you talk about times of from where your grandparents' times were at,
Mhm.
and it's eerily similar, you
Yes.
know.
Yep. They
So
had the depression, we have the recession.
yes,
Um and the wars that existed then,
yes,
that exist now, and just healthcare challenges then with TB that haven't gone away, and
yeah,
we deal with healthcare challenges now, but we do know that there's cuts happening, so I don't know how that's
Mhm.
all going to impact, and vaccines and clinical trials that that I talked about the clinical trial that went on and how that saved lives, his and countless others, how it paved the way for the future from something that happened in the past. So we've come a long way, and yet we haven't in
Yes.
many aspects.
So
Um,
I really hope that Hands of Gold is actually picked up by a lot more people. Laura posted in the room, her father, I don't want to make sure I didn't mention it, but her father passed as well. I can't get my words out in 2021. So she feels what we're saying as well.
mhm,
Um,
mhm. Yeah.
but I really hope that your book, Hands of Gold, gets into a lot more hands because I think under current situations, it might be able to teach us something. I
Definitely.
always find that our past can be, um, you know what I mean, a pathway or a doorway about how to not you know what I mean, revisit those times in our history
Right.
to
We
hopefully
can
learn and
learn.
grow.
We There's so
Yes.
much that my grandfather's words can teach about
Mhm.
dealing with life and not letting obstacles get in your path, like financial or healthcare, or and enjoying the simple pleasures of family, and holding on to the blessings that you do have instead of
Mhm.
concentrating on that what you don't have.
Yes.
And maybe it was a simpler time back then. It's harder now, I think, to ignore, because what everyone has and what you don't have, and what everyone else seems to be experiencing and you're not experiencing. So there is that. So they were happy with the simple pleasures of family gatherings and being able to practice their religion in peace. I'm not saying we can practice our religion in peace now. It seems that there's been an
I
upheaval,
know.
and just when
I
you think
know.
everything is safe,
Yes.
we've gone through a bit of, we thought we were safe until 9/11 happened.
Mhm.
We knew anti-Semitism exists, but now it's reached a heightened level to where I'm the usher at my synagogue. I had to be trained for in case there was a problem over the high holidays and also on the Sabbath. So this is something that the fear that exists in the world today. I mean, there's some scary stuff going on, and
Yes.
I think
I think
we were
I
oblivious.
Yeah, I think any time where we're segregating people, it's scary. It is it's actually petrifying, to be
Mhm,
honest with you.
mhm,
I mean,
mhm,
so many things have been rolled back, and I'll say it that way, and I'm sure you understand what I'm saying, that it's just scary. I don't even think there's any precedence for what's happening right now. I
mhm,
mean, considering how old our Constitution is and how things are just I mean, don't get me wrong. I think everything can be revamped
mhm,
or put to a better, but
mhm.
I don't know if this is the right way that it could happen. You know what I mean? I'm hoping something good comes out of all this,
Yeah.
that as we as a people can join together and change this before it becomes any more foul than it is.
Mhm. Right. Certainly the division in the world is it depends it doesn't matter what side you are on for any
No.
number of things. There is division. Yeah. I don't
Mhm.
know if we were together at any point, but it seems like it's gotten worse, this division between
Yes.
people, whether it's their differences. Well, it's always the differences. But it's not just about hatred, it's about politics. It's just some people are afraid and some people are like, this is great. So,
Right.
I want to think, like Anne Frank said, there's goodness in the world despite everything. I would like to think that there's nothing you can do but look forward to, be hopeful. Really, there's
Right.
got to be something better, or else you'll just wallow in it. And what good is that? I mean, my mom had COVID. She had poison ivy at the same time
Mm.
as COVID, and then they were flooded in Asheville, North Carolina. And do you know that she giggles? She giggles. And I said, Mom, this is not funny. So, I think she must get that from her father, who says some days the chocolate side of a cupcake lands down, and sometimes it lands up. And you got to
Mhm.
just hope that there's more good days than bad days. But I just try to learn from the history of those that went before, and my own mom.
Right.
About how to giggle when things are bad, because you have to laugh. It's like
Yeah.
sometimes it's just everything piles up on you at once, and
Well,
you can't just wallow in it.
no, you can't. I wanna thank you so much for
Yeah,
being with us,
thank
and
you.
I think that you and I's conversation could prove light to everyone else, and hopefully the book brings more awareness as well to how we can avoid any more future endeavors that would go down that path in life. And maybe this is the start of it. Maybe this is how it happens for the world, that it's from two different people from two different sides of the world with two different types of religions joining together, having a mutual conversation and realizing that they can build upon that.
Absolutely. From your mouth to God's ears, or whoever else might be listening. And I
Right.
hope that I hope that it was worth the wait for me
No,
today.
it was, it was. You were awesome. Thank you so much for being with us, and if you ever wanna come back, we can do one of your stories that you've written. We can always bring dialogue to something that, you've published. I would love to do that for you. I wanna thank you once again. I wanna thank our listeners. Until next time, guys, bye-bye for now.